This is Gregory Train, the policy advisor for BJA. Just want to make sure you can hear me clearly. If someone can indicate that they can hear me. Yes, great, cool, thank you. Again, this is Greg Terrain, the policy advisor for BJA. Really excited to have you guys on today. Again, we'll also have Tracy Williams, lead state policy advisor, will be presenting with me as well. I know, guys, we're going through some tough times right now. I know everybody probably is working from home. Definitely appreciate you being on the line today or on this webinar. Hopefully to answer a lot of good questions that you have today and hopefully address some things that you may have related to the solicitation. For today's agenda, we'll be going over OJP, the Office of Justice Programs, as well as what is BJA, talking about the funding appropriations for the Adult Drug Court Discretionary Grant Program, the eligibility requirements, looking at who can apply, looking at the grant categories, as well as the grant requirements. We'll review some of the application sections. Then you hear from Tracy to talk about the top 12 grant application tips. That'd be very helpful for you when you're applying for this grant. And then we'll have a Q&A. Again, Kristen mentioned that please put your questions in the chat. Following this webinar, it's going to be recorded, but following the webinar, we will also have frequently asked questions, not only from this webinar, but from past webinars located both on the BJA Drug Court website, our link on BJA, and also on the NDCRC website as well under the grant resources page. So what is OJP? Office of Justice Programs is one of 3 grant making components within the Department of Justice. The other is Violence Against Women, as well as the COPS program, Community-Oriented Policing Services. OJP provides grant funding, training, and resource statistics for the criminal justice community. So within OJP, you have several bureaus and offices. So again, OJP sits within the Department of Justice. Within OJP, you have BJA, the Bureau of Justice Assistance, where we sit. And we have BJS, the Bureau of Justice Statistics, which focuses on criminal justice related statistics. Then you have NIJ, National Institute of Justice, focused on criminal justice related research. You have the Office of Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention. Many of you might be aware they fund family drug courts as well as juvenile drug courts and focus more on juvenile related grant funding. Then you have the SMART office, focuses on sex offender monitoring, and then you have OVC, Office of Victims of Crimes, all within OJP. Next. So BJ's mission is really to provide leadership and service in grant administration and criminal justice policy development to support local, state, and tribal justice strategies to achieve safer communities. To learn more about BJA, you can visit at our website, Facebook, or via Twitter. Next. So the priorities for the drug court program, this is really critical when you're applying for funding through BJA, and specifically here for the drug court program. When you're applying, you really need to make sure that your application is aligned with the current administration's priorities, that being combating the opioid epidemic, preventing overdose, and addressing stimulants, providing support for law enforcement, expanding service to our veterans, and supporting key needs related to substance abuse, alcoholism in tribal and rural communities. Again, this is very important, again, when you're writing your application, that you are aligning your application with these priorities. These are some of the things that our peer reviewers will be looking at when they're reviewing your application. Next. Program goals. Obviously, this is very important when you're writing your application. Our program goal is to equip community courts, supervision systems with effective tools that involves evidence-based substance abuse treatment, mandatory drug testing, sanctioned incentives, and transitional services in a judicially supervised court setting, focusing on high risk and high need offenders. Next slide. So one of the key things related to the drug court program is our current appropriations. So within the Department of Justice, our BJA Drug Court Discretionary Grant Program, we have 2 appropriations. one specifically for adult drug courts, and we have a separate appropriations for veteran treatment courts. As you can look from the fiscal year from 2017 to 2020, you can see our drug court or adult drug court funding has nearly doubled over those few years. And when you look at the veteran treatment court, you see it nearly tripled. So really, this is a great opportunity for people to begin to start applying for funding. So in terms, I see a question, was this adult drug courts referred to opioid for other type of courts? So I'll get into that when we talk about the type of, it's on another slide, when we talk about the type of courts that fall underneath adult drug court for the discretionary grant program. So next slide. Okay, so what does this currently fund? So this is for the appropriations. It currently funds drug court sites, so site-based awards. BJA is projecting to make up to 96 awards this year. So this is probably should have been taken out. The drug court plan initiative is not currently a part of this current solicitation, but it also funds the site-based awards, which I mentioned earlier, drug court training and technical assistance, which is our TTA, our free TTA services from our TTA providers. Our TTA is primarily focused on BJA-funded drug courts or operational drug courts, but we also support other drug courts or support the field with our training technical assistance. Again, this is offered to all BJA awardees. Once you apply and you receive the award, you'll receive the free TTA, as well as our National Drug Court Resource Center, which serves as a clearinghouse for drug court resources. Any information you need to look up under drug courts, any resources or library of resources, podcast, or whatever you're looking up, you can go to the NDCRC website and go under the different topics to find a number of different information that you would be helpful for applying for grants or drug court grants, or just general resources for drug courts. Okay, many of you are aware the solicitation was released on February 24th, and now it closes on May 14th. We expanded the time that you can apply. This year it's 90 days or close to 90 days. In the past, it's 60 days. So this is new for this year. This change wasn't made due to the coronavirus or anything, but this year we wanted to make sure that we allowed enough opportunity for people to apply this year for the solicitation. So with that, you see our increased budget as well as our increase in time frame for people to apply. So we're really looking for a lot of application this year. And this is, again, I'll say one of the probably the best times to actually apply for the solicitation. Okay, eligibility requirements for Category 1, implementation of veteran treatment courts, and Category 2, the enhancement of adult drug courts and veteran treatment courts. The requirement or eligibility is for states and territories, states and local courts, counties, units of local government, as well as federally recognized Indian tribal governments. And for Category 3 is primarily for state agencies apply. It includes the state administrating agency and the administrative office of the courts, state substance abuse agencies. So we're looking at who may apply. So the question was, what type of courts can apply? For this, it could be an adult drug court, it could be DWI, DUI courts, co-occurring courts, tribal illness wellness courts, veteran treatment courts, as well as, so we no longer provide funding for hybrid courts. That probably should have been removed from here, I apologize. But what we do when you're applying for BJA funding, if you currently have an operational, this is for the enhancement category. So if you currently have an operational adult drug court and you're looking to expand your service to include another docket, then you would be, if that other document was a veterans treatment court, the language in the solicitation indicates that we would want you to indicate the percentage amount of funds that would support the veteran treatment court and what percentage amount of funds that would support the adult drug court. And that's only if you're looking to expand a docket that includes a veteran treatment court. because of the appropriations. They have separate appropriations. Again, with the type of courts that can be funded, BJA does not fund family drug courts or juvenile drug courts. And I see a question related to nonprofits. Nonprofits would not be able to apply. It's the eligibility requirement. Again, the eligibility requirements for category 1 and 2 are pretty much local government or state government. And nonprofits wouldn't be able to apply, wouldn't be eligible under this solicitation. And for category 3, again, that's state agencies. Grant categories, we have 3 categories. We have the implementation of veteran treatment courts. Again, this, what you'll see, this is, if those are familiar with the solicitation from the previous years, for this year, categories only specific for implementation of veteran treatment courts. The grant maximum is $500,000, and that's over a period of 36 months or 3 years. Again, that's, again, I get the question, what does that mean by 500,000 over 36 months? That's, if you break that down, divide 500 into 3, that's how much it would be for those 3 years. So that's the overall amount. And again, implementation is for those courts that have done substantial amount of planning and looking to start a new veterans treatment court. Moving to category 2, this is similar to what it was in past years, enhancement of adult drug courts and veteran treatment courts. Grant maximum, again, is $500,000 over the 36 months. Again, this is focusing on support or expanding drug court services to, or veteran treatment court services to, an operational drug court. Operational is defined within the solicitation as operating for approximately, or operating a year. For this solicitation, it would mean that the operational court would have been operating as of September 30th, 2020, which would be the day before the start date of this award, if you receive the award. So again, these are for operational drug courts. And then third category, again, for those who may be familiar with the statewide category, we no longer have statewide category A and B. Now it's a category 3, providing statewide strategies to support adult drug courts and veteran treatment courts. Grant maximum is $750 over a 36-month period. And again, I just want to make you aware, and I'll get into talking about the breakdown between the change in this subcategory A and B. But for this funding category, I'll talk about that in the next slide. I'll get to it.
Okay. All right, good. So, so I went over the category 1 implementation of veteran treatment courts, and I just talked about the allowable use of funds. Again, I had mentioned that with this is not an exhaustive list of what is allowable. And again, it just depends on what your current needs as you're applying for this solicitation. And again, for category 1, it's primarily for, it's specifically for veteran treatment course that you can apply. Okay, so you can scale up program capacity. So if you're currently serving 20 and you're looking to serve 40, you can use funds to do that. However, you may need to do that, enhance court operations, improve the quality or intensity of services. If you're looking to expand drug court services or include an evidence-based curriculum or hire a case manager to support your program, those all are allowable use of funds. Again, for category 2 enhancement, these are for operational drug courts. And I think before I was able to get back on, I think there were questions related to what does operational mean. It means your court has been operating at least a year, with the date of drop dead would be September 30th of 2020, that you would have been operating. If it's less than to that date, then it wouldn't be operational for at least a year. And again, if you're looking to enhance drug court services to a new court, that would not be an enhancement. It has to be expanding drug court service to an operational drug court program. Okay, for category 3, statewide allowable use of funds. And this is key because One of the things that has changed from Category 3, I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, where we had the two subcategories, subcategory A and B. For many of you all know the subcategory B was for states to be able to fund individual drug courts depending on the needs within the state. The information here, allowable use of funds, continues to support that in terms of allowing states to be able to improve, enhance, or expand drug court services to drug courts within the state, whether it's expanding drug treatment or expanding curriculum or what it have been, whatever your needs is, we'll be able to expand treatment service or expand those drug court services statewide, and that could be to individual courts based off their needs as it relates to they need treatment or what other drug court services that are required for them. Also expanding treatment services, audit, technical assistance, data collection, drug court or TTA. Okay. For this year, for FY2020, looking at those are being able to address staff turnover, offer operational skill or update. Okay, it sounds like can you guys still hear me clearly?
You're in and out a bit, so when you're in, you're clear, but when you're out, you're all the way out.
Goodness, wow, this is, technology is, okay. All right, so one of the new categories for this year, or not categories, but areas that's been added to the solicitation is the OJP priority areas. For FY2020, the three priority categories or areas for Category 1 and 2 are applications looking to address challenge to rural communities, applicants that demonstrate that they're going to be benefiting or support high poverty areas, as well as offering enhancement to qualified opportunity zones. So I highly recommend, if you're applying, that you fit within these categories, make sure that you pay careful attention to this area and apply as many of the priority areas you can. One of the grant requirements, as many of you know, in the past for the Adult Drug Court, Veteran Treatment Court Discretionary Grant Program, there was a lot of focus on opioids, demonstrating, making sure that applicants demonstrate how they plan to address opioids within their application. This year, we expanded the language to include stimulants and substance abuse. So in your program narrative, applicants are required to describe a plan to serve offenders with substance addictions. So this is an expansion from the language from the last two solicitations to include stimulants as well as substance abuse. Okay, medication-assisted treatment. Applicants must demonstrate that the drug court for which funds are being sought will not deny any eligible clients access to programs because of their FDA-approved medication. So this was continue to be the language that's been in the solicitation for the past few years, and obviously it remains there. Okay, this is new for this solicitation this year, and I'll read this. It has to do with medical marijuana. Award recipients are prohibited from using federal funds to support program or activities that violate the Controlled Substance Act. Program or activities funded under a BJA Adult Drug Court award must ensure that drug court participants are tested periodically for the use of controlled substance. That includes medical marijuana. So what this indicates is that medical marijuana is prohibited from a BJA-funded drug court program. And this is new language in the FY2020 solicitation. Again, many of you are familiar with our solicitation. There is a violent offenders prohibition. So if you're looking to use BJA funds to support violent offenders, that cannot be done, is prohibited. But the new language, which I had italicized on the slide here, is that grantees, so if you're receiving both BJA Adult Drug Court funding and other funds, whether it's from the state or local funds to support your drug court program, The grantee must be able to track these funds or the expenses to ensure that there's a separation of funds, and that they must maintain documentation that they can show an auditor if necessary. Meaning, if you have BJA funds and other funds, if you decide to serve violent offenders, then you must clearly be able to show a separation of funds for that local or state funds that support violent offenders versus the adult drug court BJA funds. And again, note that applicants who serve veterans can serve violent offenders under the B. They have to indicate type B within their indicating the population that they're looking to serve. And that only is an exception for veteran treatment courts. Okay, I'm gonna go over the various application sections. So the first one is the application for federal assistance. This is required. Many of you are familiar with the SF-424. Again, that is a required document that needs to be submitted with your complete application. Then there's the program, and that is required. Then there's the program abstract. I'll talk about a little bit later. What's important though, when you look at both the 424, the program abstract, and the budget, be sure to make sure when you complete those documents that the amount that you're applying for is the same. You make sure you look at each of the forms, make sure that you're submitting the same amount of funding that you're requesting on each of the forms. And again, for the program narrative, that is required. We have a budget detail worksheet and budget narrative. That's also required. Again, the things that you see are required. If those aren't submitted, then the application won't make it through the initial screening process. So please be sure to include those when you submit your application. We have the indirect cost rate agreement, the tribal authorization resolution, the financial management and system internal controls questionnaire, disclosure of lobbying activities is another form, and then we have additional attachments I'll talk about on the next slide. Okay, there's also the time and task plan I'll talk about. Again, that is required. You definitely need to have that. The MOU signed by all team members or by a designated agency rep. We have the physical agent MOU, the state substance abuse agency director or designee letter, as well as the state court administrator letter. Those are both recommended, highly recommended. Policies and procedure manual, if applicable. Applicant disclosure of pending applications. So if you submit an application with SAMHSA or any drug court application, you need to indicate that, disclose that that has been done. Research and evaluation independency, and request and justification for employee compensation waiver if applicable. These are all other attachments that would need to be completed if applicable. Okay, so in terms of the abstract, there's certain things that need to be a part of that abstract. Obviously, your funding category, if you're category 1, category 2, category 3, you need to indicate that, whether it's a pre or post adjudication, the type of drug court that you're applying for. If it's a co-occurring court, it's a veteran treatment court, that needs to be indicated, the name and location or jurisdiction that the court is in, as well as who are the contacts. Again, the amount that's being requested. Please be sure when you're submitting the amount requested, it does not exceed the amount within that category. Again, category 1 and category 2 is $500,000 over 36 months. And then also for category 3 is $750,000 for 36 months. Current capacity, what are you currently serving and what you plan on increasing that capacity to? Participants you proposing to serve, that target population, what are the 10 key components that you're going to be addressing in your application, and any data collection mechanism. Also, within the abstract, there's an abstract or a template provided to you that allows only up to 400 word limit. If you need to have more words, you need to be able to express more within your abstract, recommend that you submit an attachment to the application and definitely label it the abstract. Okay, for the program narrative, it's important that it's double-spaced, 12-point font, 1-inch margins. It does not exceed the page limits. It's important to know for the number of your pages, 1 of 20. So if you first page should be at the bottom or wherever you have it should be 1 of 1 of 20, 2 of 20, 3 of 20, 4 of 20, all the way up to 20 of 20. This is key in terms of in your program narrative. It's important to know how much each of the categories in each of the sections are weighted. So you can see the statement of problem for each is 20%, project design and implementation is 40%, capabilities and competence is 20, and the data required performance measures is 15. So when looking at that, you definitely want to put most of your efforts, obviously in the whole program narrative, but where you see most bang for your buck is the project design and implementation, where you probably want to put most of your efforts in. And then lastly, you see at the bottom, the budget worksheet is 5%. Okay, for the program narrative, it's important that you use verifiable data in terms of making your point for your need within the application. It could be arrest data, recidivism data. This allows us to be able to determine your level of need, your program capacity, as well as your ability to manage the grant. So again, all the qualitative and statistical data needs to be verifiable. Okay, for a budget and budget narrative, it should be itemized budget for each year of the grant. 25% match is required, and match can be a combination of cash or in-kind. In-kind could be as simple as using office space from another organization as in-kind. Again, it's important to note with the 25% match, if you submit over the 25% match and your budget is approved by BJA and you get to receive the award, you will be held liable for that overmatch. Applicants should budget up to have the 3 team members attend up to 2 BJA approved conferences, as well as trainings and prior approval, planning and reporting of conference meetings and training cost. Okay, time and task plan, again, this is required. Most applicants submit this in form of a chart. It should outline your goals and objectives, summarize major activities, have data completion, and as well as who is responsible for that activity, as well as indicate the number of program participants to be served. Okay, other additional attachments I mentioned earlier, the key drug court members MOU. This should be an MOU that indicates all of the drug court team members on it, and it should indicate their duties and responsibilities. And again, it can either be signed by each of the drug court team members or a designated drug court person on the staff that verifies each of the key members' roles. Then there's also a fiscal agent MOU. This is for Category 1 and for Category 2 applicants, and it's primarily for if you have someone other than the drug court that's applying, let's say it's the county applying on behalf of the drug court, then you would need to have a fiscal agent MOU between both the county and the actual drug court, just to ensure there's some direct coordination between the two entities. Then we have the State Substance Abuse Agency Director Letter. This just is make sure that you're conforming to the framework of the state strategy for substance abuse treatment. And then we have the Chief Justice or the State Court Administrator Letter. And that just pretty much describes how you're looking to enhance state efforts and make sure it's in line with what the state is looking to do. And then lastly, the applicant disclosure of proposed subrecipients. If you're looking to have subrecipients within your application, those need to be indicated, and there's an attachment within the application that information can be provided. Okay, what I want to do now is just turn this over to Tracy, who is a state policy advisor, works directly with our grantees, and she's going to go over some of the top 12 application tips to prevent any issues or delays with your application. I'll turn it over to you, Tracy.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm just going to go over some issues that are trends, actually, that have been identified that have been holding up the approval or access to award funds for new grantees. Okay, so as Greg was stating, the SF424 you need to make sure that the legal name, your tax EIN number, and your address are actually applicable or active. Okay, so you can go to your, go to page 12 of the solicitation, and that will actually give you a walkthrough as provided. You can also go to the OJP website, and there is a link under Overview of Grants Funding for Grants 101. This will provide you with samples of the materials that are required so you can get a better understanding of what's going on. The light bulb will kind of go off when you're devising or developing rather your application, because it'll show you stuff like budget summaries, writing proposals, identifying your project strategic plan, etc. Okay, now the SF424 and the SAM registration need to be active. Okay, our Office Chief Financial Officer, they are going through, a matter of fact, right now, all of our active grantees to ensure that their SAM registration is active. Okay, now the SF424, another element of it is the authorized representative. Okay, the authorized representative is very important because that is the official that's going into a legally binding contract with the federal government. So if that should have changed, if a new mayor should have been elected or a commissioner, you need to submit a letter of delegation of authorized representative. Okay, now on your SF424, you need to make sure that the federal share is correct and is for the entire 36 months. Because there have been instances where grantees put the wrong amount on the SF424 and it wasn't the same as the budget that they submitted. Okay, and in that case, we're going to return all that back to you, and you're going to have to revise the information and resubmit it. So in order to keep some going back and forth, which will hold up your access to your award funds, it's very important, first of all, that you familiarize yourself with the solicitation and go to the OJP website to Grants 101, as well as the application requirements. Okay, now the budget detail worksheet is a template that's provided, and it's pre-calculated. So the information or the calculations that you put into it will pre-calculate and give you the total on the summary. It's very important that you pay attention to all of the allowable and unallowable things that you can apply for, as well as to make sure that you have no issues that are supplanting. Say, for instance, if you are already paying someone to perform drug court duties and you out of your budget and you're not applying it as match, but you want to take our funds to pay their salary, that would be supplanting because you're already paying them with your money. Okay, then as I stated, the allowable, unallowable costs, that's very important. All right, now there was an update to the Part 200 of the uniform requirements for grants. And based on these updates, we have been very stringent on the difference between a subaward and a procurement contract. On the OJP website, there is a checklist that will assist you in determining a subrecipient versus a contractor, as far to make sure that you don't misclassify that information, because again, that will make your budget be returned to you for you to make those revisions. Okay, now the budget match, of course, that's on page 11, the solicitation. And again, I'm going to stress, please familiarize yourself with the solicitation. All the match cost items must meet the allowability guidelines as federal cost items. And as Greg stated, if you exceed that 25%, you will be held liable for the amount that you were approved for. So I strongly suggest that you make sure that you just meet the 25%. Because say if you have budgets within your organization or for some other reasons you aren't able to meet that amount, you are required to meet the amount that you were approved for. The application attachment general section, as Greg was saying in section 12, this is very helpful if each attachment is separated by the and named as it is in solicitation. Okay, it's highly recommended that you do not combine all of them into one document, because during the approval process, we have to review that information. And if we have to go through a large document of 100 pages for all of your attachments, that will impede our ability to rapidly review your application, as opposed to having them cut and dry as different attachments. Application attachment disclosure pending application. As Greg stated, this is just stating if you have applied for award for the same purposes with another organization. Okay, then the research, evaluation, and independence, integrity is an attachment that's required, and you can refer to page 16 of the solicitation. Okay, program narrative, opioid, stimulant, and substance abuse reduction. All projects funded under FY2020, Adult Drug Court and Veteran Treatment Court, are required to describe a plan that they have to serve offenders with a substance addiction. Okay, and that should be reflected in this program narrative using the language or per the language of the solicitation under each category. Okay, and the grant application resources, of course, is the ndcrc.org and the grant solicitation resources. Again, the OJP website provides a lot of information regarding how to develop your application and gives you a grant funding. And as I stated, because there is a distinct variation or differentiation between subcontracts and awardees. I'm sorry, and excuse me, awards and contracts. You can go to the website and there's a checklist on there to help determine the classification.
Okay. Just wanted to add, I know we were on the NDCRC link on the previous slide. Just want to make sure everyone knows also, we do have maybe 5 examples of exemplary applications or project narratives, one for statewide, I believe, one for enhancement implementation, and I believe we also may have a tribal one on the NDCRC website where you can look at some project narratives that were done maybe a year or 2 years ago that were awarded. And again, there's other grant information resources, like Tracy mentioned, for more information regarding the best practice standards, 10 key components for drug courts, as well as veteran treatment courts, tribal wellness courts. And again, like I mentioned, the examples of successful project narratives. And I'd just like to mention in terms of just being able to get started with, if you have any questions with grant.gov, here's the customer support hotline information. But also on BJA's website, we do have several webinars on how best to set up with grants.gov, with GMS, the Grants Management System. If you're interested in that process, please visit. I'm gonna give you guys a web link to it. It's bja.ojp.gov/funding-webinars. In the title of that webinar, is BJA Educational Webinar Series, the federal funding process. So it'll help you in terms of going through the whole process of being able to apply from the start to finish with BJA grants. So with that, I want to turn it back over to Kristen, you guys, and we can move forward with some of the questions.
Great. So just as a reminder, we will be posting a copy of this presentation to the NDCRC website. So we'll have that up by tomorrow, as well as a copy of the slides, so folks can see all of that. But Greg, a couple questions regarding Category 2 application. Okay. One is a drug treatment court and a veterans treatment court from the same county. Can they submit a joint application?
No, you can only submit there can only be one fiscal agent or one applicant. So they can also serve as a subrecipient, but it's only one applicant, and that information is indicated in the solicitation on page 11. It's under C, eligibility information. It's the first thing that falls on at the bottom of page 11.
Okay. Second question, is hiring a therapist for an adult treatment court an allowable use of funds?
Yes, that's an allowable use of funds. Yes, you would. That will be part of your expansion of treatment services to the drug court program. Okay. Or to the operational drug court program.
Okay. A veterans treatment court expansion project as a multi-jurisdictional court, is that a viable applicant?
Yes.
Okay. And then just a clarification, the training requirement for proposals would be 3 team members for 2 meetings a year for each year of the 36-month grant period. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. If funding expires, BJA funding in 2021, can we apply for enhancement funding?
For this particular grant, that would be a no, just because then you would have to, well, it depends on what you're applying for. So it kind of gets a little, so if you're applying, so if you're an adult drug court and you're planning to apply for the new funding for 2020, it would have to be a different focus of your application. You could apply, but it'd have to be a different focus. It'll have to be a different focus or a different program. It couldn't be, you can't have, the goal is you can't have 2 drug courts funded for the exact same thing at the exact same time.
Okay, great. Can grant funds pay for more long-term housing after recovery homes? So can BJA funding be used to support funding?
It supports recovery. It could be used to support recovery housing. But you know what, let me look into that. I'm not really sure in terms of long-term housing. I'm not sure. I have to get back with you on that. That's something I'll have on the F frequently asked questions. I have to look into that. I know in terms of recovery support services, sober housing is allowable use of funds, but long-term housing, I'm not quite sure. I have to get back on that to give you an exact answer.
Okay, great. A current adult drug court program wants to add a veterans court. Would they be able to utilize this solicitation to fund the veterans treatment court addition?
Yep, that means they would be applying to expand a new docket if they're currently an operational drug court. Yeah.
Can we add additional funding for the adult treatment court existing budget and add a new budget for the VTC enhancement?
Yes, you can. If you have an adult drug court and a VTC, you're looking to expand that adult drug court, and you're looking to expand, maybe adding an evidence-based curriculum to it, or adding or expanding an anger management program to the veteran treatment court, or trauma-informed care. then yes, that it could be that. But it has to be expanding the program with a different focus or a different drug court service.
Okay. Another question, will state Supreme Court administrative offices of the court priorities be considered in any way? Will a letter outlining priorities of the state be accepted and considered?
It would be accepted. It would go into potential part of the consideration of the application. We look at a variety of different things when the applications come in. If there's more support from the state or from individuals from the state, then that's also included within the application. Then that's also looked at as well.
Okay. This person, I currently have a SAMHSA grant that helps support my adult drug court, DWI, VTC, and co-occurring court. Is it specific to pay for MAT and recovery housing? Would my court be eligible for this grant if we were using the funds for a completely different project?
Yes, if you were using it for a differently complete project, yes. So we coordinate with SAMHSA. SAMHSA, I believe solicitation was already out, but we definitely coordinate with them to make sure that we're not getting duplicate applications and we're not funding the same services. So you can, even if you already have a BJA grant, but if you're looking at expanding with different services, then that would be fine.
Okay. If I have a CTAS grant that ends in 2021 for my Healing to Wellness Court, could I implement new things such as hiring a probation officer for the first year and then the second year focus to what the CTAS was focusing on since the grant will end?
That's challenging. That's an interesting question. So it sounds like with their CTAS, they would be for the first year, but that would be still part of that application. I would recommend that they submit the application focusing on the new efforts that they were trying to support. And then if they're awarded, it may be that they can work with their grant manager potentially to look at how they can better serve that population if they were looking to look at some of the things they were doing with their previous CTAS grant.
Okay. The major city in our county meets the poverty qualifications along with 4 other cities in the southern sector. The county, however, does not, because there are several wealthy cities. In our application, do we have to build screening so we only serve persons within those poverty cities? Example, a case manager, a program manager, or a computer system.
Yeah, the solicitation isn't that descriptive in saying that. And looking at page 8 of the solicitation, where it's focusing on the poverty priority, it just says the applicant must provide information to demonstrate that the individuals who are intended to benefit from the requested grant reside in high poverty areas, and using census data to determine that. So it doesn't. It's not specific to say that within the solicitation. So to say, I would say, no, I mean, it'd be good to be able to distinguish that, but it's not that direct in the solicitation on page 8.
Okay. If we are asking for a computer system that would be for both pre and post adjudication, how do we designate that? So I believe the question is asking, is that an allowable use of funds to support a computer system that would be for both pre and post adjudication?
Yes, you would be able to use that. Yes, that would be their system to track clients, and yeah, that would be allowable use of funds.
Okay. And then the templates for the abstract and budget are in the grants.gov and specifically in the workspace. This person hasn't found the templates.
Yeah, it should be in the workspace, yes.
Can key drug court members MOU and the fiscal agent MOU be combined as one document if the grantee is serving as the fiscal agent?
No, those have to be 2 separate documents. So there's the MOU, the fiscal agent MOU, specifically for those who aren't the direct drug court. That would be a separate MOU from the key members MOU. Those are two separate MOUs.
With regard to supplanting, we will be creating a position for a Veterans Court Coordinator. We will use a probation officer that is already employed with our court. He will be reducing his probation officer duties drastically for the Veterans Court. Can we use the grant to pay the portion of his salary for Veterans Court only?
Let me pass that to Tracy. Tracy. I think you're on mute, Tracy.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
We can hear you, Tracy.
Okay. Yes, you can. The budget detail worksheet actually under personnel line item gives you the percentage of time that will be totally dedicated to the program. So in this case, if he's going to be working 50% of his time on the drug court, then we would fund 50% of his salary out of drug court funds.
Who should we contact for further questions regarding clarification and not technical questions?
You have my information. You can contact me. You can contact BJA directly, but you can follow up with me. Again, we'll have most of these questions and other questions a part of a FAQ that will be posted on the NDCRC website.
Great. Next question, we have both a VTC and a DUI court. We would need a separate enhancement application for each court, or can we file a joint application?
If it's one applicant, you would be able to file one application to support both the adult drug court and the VTC.
Okay. What is the time frame from application to activation of SF-424 and SAM? I believe it's the time that it would take to get a SAM registration approved.
I think the process, because I can't remember exactly. I did this presentation about a year ago. It's the one I referred to with the website I gave on the BJA website. I think I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it takes about 10 days for getting a DUNS number. I'm probably saying this wrong. I don't want to give wrong information. But what I would say is you want to do that process immediately. And for more information about that process, please just go to the BJA webinar website, where we have the webinar that I mentioned earlier, the BJA Education Webinar Series. And the title of that webinar is The Federal Funding Process. Again, it walks you through that process and tells you how long it takes for each part of that process to sign up for the grants.gov, GMS, to get a DUNS number. All that is a part of that webinar. I think the webinar is probably about 45 minutes, but it's also, you can also print out the PDF of those slides.
Great. Okay. Is there a limit on the number of applications that can be submitted per category by the same institution?
No, you can submit as many applications as long as those applications are obviously have a different focus, or they're supporting a different jurisdiction or what have you. Yeah, that's not a problem. You can.
Can a state judicial circuit consisting of 3 counties apply for a Veterans Court program?
Yes, if it's if you say it's the state that's applying.
A state judicial circuit, yes. So it sounds like it's a multi-jurisdictional.
Yeah.
To support a Veterans Court program.
I believe if it's just trying to look at what the eligibility are. If they're a state agency that's applying, then yes, they would be able to work jointly to. Since it's a statewide grant, to be able to improve and expand services or drug court services or veteran treatment court services statewide jointly, yes, they would be able to apply.
Okay. For Category 2 enhancement, can grant funds be used to assist participants with housing costs, such as security deposit, to get them set up in stable housing while they're still participating in the program?
That would be an allowable cost. Yes.
Can the funds be used for coordinators and probation officer salaries?
Yes. Yep. You can use funds to hire staff to support or expand the services in the program. Yes.
Okay. Can a nonprofit be a participating Veterans Court program entity if there is an MOU between the nonprofit and the grant applicant?
Sounds like what they're asking, can they? So the nonprofit couldn't be the applicant, but may serve as a subrecipient to the applicant.
Okay. Yes. Can this grant be used to help pay for VTC mentor coordinator for a court that does not have a mentor program?
Yes, that would be an expansion of services to that VTC.
Okay. Only a few more thus far. If a budget item has been approved by the agency's current budget for a period of 2 years, can the applicant request funds to cover this item on the 3rd year without being considered supplanting?
Okay, repeat the question. I'm sorry.
If a budget item has been approved by the agency's current budget for a period of 2 years, can the applicant request funds to cover this item on the 3rd year without being considered supplanting?
Yeah, you got to be very careful about that. Let me hold that question. Let me respond to that a little bit later because I just want to make sure. It sounds more of a question I want one of the grant managers. I don't know if Tracy's still on the line. I just wanted to make sure that to get her feedback on that. I don't know if Tracy's still on the line.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm sorry, I had some issues. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
we can.
Okay. Yeah. If you're not going to, if there's not going to be reallocation of funds, in the sense of there are 2 criteria for reallocation of funds. One has to be 10% of the cumulative budget. Number 2, if you're moving funds from an approved award line item to one that was not approved, you have to do a budget modification. The second scenario is if you're moving funds, say for instance, if you went to a conference in year 1 and you decided not to go in year 2, but you wanted to go in year 3, then you would have to submit a program office approval request to in order to notify us of what you anticipate doing in the next year that was not originally funded. So yes, the answer is yes, in a nutshell.
And Tracy, there was another budget specific question from earlier. If we want to replace part-time positions with full-time personnel, how should this be handled to avoid supplanting?
Okay, well, what you would need to do, again, if the funds are not being reallocated, if you're just, say, for instance, you're going to, originally you were using part of the funding, of course, with drug court awards, but you were going to apply the other 50% as match. You could do it that way. Now, if you were going to reallocate funds, of course, you still would have to request approval to cover that full-time position. But an option is that you can continue funding the part-time duties of that individual and then apply the other amount to your match. I hope that answers your question.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So Greg, I think this one is for you. Could funds be used for additional supportive services? An example being financial counseling.
Financial counseling, that, I guess it sounds like that would be falling into, well, actually doesn't really fall into recovery support services. So if it's identified as a need with the drug court as supporting or enhancing the drug court, I would see that as an allowable use of funds. I don't know, Tracy, do you have any comment on that? Yeah, this is Greg. I see that as an allowable use of funds.
Okay. Next question, does an evaluator
I'm
need?
sorry. Hello, this is Tracy. I'm sorry. I just wanted to provide you with a resource. I keep clicking mute and not unclicking it. A good resource is to go to nadcp.org and go to ndci.org within that website. It provides a list of all the trainings that are allowable. under BJA.
Great. Does an evaluator be included on the drug court team member MOU?
Yes. You can include them as a team member, yes.
Okay. Can I submit the references in a separate attachment, or do I have to include them in the 20-page program narrative?
References, that would be an attachment.
Okay. What are the DOJ approved trainings?
You can go to, and I think it's, if you could move the slide back, the previous slide, I think it's on that. Actually, well, it's not listed on here, but on NDCRC website, you can go to trainings or training technical assistance and can see what are the approved trainings via our TTA providers.
Okay.
And if you receive an award and you're not sure about particular trainings, you can always contact your grant manager to determine whether training is BJA allowable.
Okay. And then would in-state trainings or conferences be acceptable for for training dollars included in the budget?
Yes, it would be including budget, but again, you would want to make sure get a prior approval from your grant manager once you become an awardee.
Okay. Would a domestic violence drug court that serves adults be considered a hybrid court?
Well, one of the things that we're currently not running is hybrid courts. I'm sorry, so what's the question again?
Would a domestic violence drug court that serves adults be considered a hybrid court?
No, it would be just considered an adult drug court.
Okay.
It serves a special population.
Okay. And this appears to be the last question as of now. What are some examples of soft match other than salaries?
All right, I'll pass that to Tracy.
You can use, say for instance, supplies that you purchase that can be considered a soft match, as well as trainings that, say for instance, if you want to go to your statewide drug court conference, you could use that. Another form of soft match, you may pay, for instance, conference registrations. So those are some of the things that you can apply as a soft match.
Okay. We do have another question. As a Category 3 applicant, would hiring a position to develop and implement a statewide audit system that would be used to audit and provide TTA to programs across the state be a viable application?
Yes, that would be allowable use of funds, yes.
Okay. And it looks like we have answered all of the questions posed so far. We do have one more. For domestic violence courts, we want to remind applicants that they cannot serve violent offenders unless it is for a veterans treatment court.
Correct, yeah. Would have to indicate that in the application. They would be applying for type B. They definitely can serve violent offenders. They just have to make sure that they're, and this is primarily for veteran treatment courts, yes.
And it looks like there are no more questions. Leave it open for a little bit. Again, as just a reminder for all attendees, we will have this recording posted to the NDCRC website. Also on the website, we do have a number of, as Greg mentioned, grant writing resources, as well as a calendar of events that includes grant due dates, webinars, training conferences, and other events that may be of interest to you all as you're putting together your grant applications. There is another question. Does the soft match funds have to come from the county government budget, or can they be paid by other grants?
No, you can't use other grants to pay for match. Because as is stated, that's the purpose of disclosure of pending applications. The reason for that is you have to notify us if you are applying for a grant for the same purpose. So no, you can't do that.
Looks like. Does soft match mean in kind, or does it include cash as well?
Well, in kind, I think a lot of people get that confused. In kind means it's coming from a third party. So say, for instance, if you have a treatment provider that is contributing ancillary services towards match, that will be considered in-kind match. Cash match is anything that you do that you're paying for. So if, for instance, like I said, with salaries or purchasing supplies or registration costs, that would be considered cash match. In kind is only if a third party is contributing those funds toward match.
Let's see if there are any other questions. And I know we're right at 2:30. We do have one question. Is Medicaid paid for treatment? Is Medicaid a paid for treatment match?
Can they expound on that question? I'm not really sure exactly what they mean. You can, I'm not really sure what exactly that they're asking.
Okay.
So are they asking if they use Medicaid to pay for treatment for participants? Would that be considered, can they consider that as match? Is that what you're asking?
I think that might be the question. We're not getting any, we are a Medicaid expansion state. Can Medicaid with state match be used for the match requirement?
Well, that would be, is that within the treatment provider? So you're paying the treatment provider with Medicaid? Is that what they're asking? Because I think I'm going to have to follow up on that and get back to them on that one.
Okay, yeah. Yes. And then there's one other question. For a veterans court, can the VA services provided be an in-kind match?
Yes.
All right. So we're right at 2:30. So we thank you all for attending. And again, we will be posting this online within the next 24 hours.
Okay. All right, I'd just like to say one last thing. Again, you can see my slide has my information on here. If you have further questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll definitely make sure we collect those questions and put them a part of the FAQ. And again, I'd like to thank everyone for staying online, and due to some of the challenges that we had, technology today, I appreciate you guys staying on and asking your questions, and hopefully this was helpful for you. But again, if you have other questions, please reach out to me. And I'd like to say, everybody, like I'm seeing everybody say, stay safe, stay home, and don't get too close to people.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you.